We are all in a battle for our minds every day. How do we distinguish between the push and pull of the Holy Spirit versus our flesh? Just like any battle, we need to be prepared, and the Bible lays out clear instructions. Get armored up. It's time to engage in spiritual warfare. The Armor of God, Belt of Truth, today on the Discipleship on Repeat podcast. All right, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining, everybody. We're your hosts, Matt and Chris. How you doing, Chris?
Hey, Matt. I'm great. How are you, brother?
Excited to be back on the mic again, man. Thanks for joining me today. And what's been going on?
Oh, man, just working like crazy and trying to stay away from all these allergies. Seems like everything's blooming out this time of year, and between all the yard work and all the other work we've got going on, just like I've said in the past, if the devil can't make you sin, he'll make you busy. So I've been trying to not be too busy and keep my priorities in line. What about you?
Absolutely, man. It's been a lot. I've been on this fitness journey, man. This been a lot more into trying to live like my grandparents, like my great grandparents. Kind of becoming a biohacker of sorts. Trying to get back to the way things used to be, and with food and environment and all that kind of stuff. So it's really cool just to try to do what I can to kind of keep myself healthy, and I think that's a big part of it. So that's the journey that my wife and I have been on. So it's been really fun just to try to, do a lot of those things and try to be healthier in life as we move forward.
Heck yeah.
So,
good things to strive for.
Absolutely, man. So I'm really excited about our episode here today. We got a good one. We're gonna. This is our first series for all our listeners out there. It's on the armor of God. We're really passionate, but two dudes passionate about the armor of God and what can we do to prepare ourselves and our listeners to be prepared to battle spiritual warfare, because it's out there today, right, brother?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think if we're going into battle, and you're hearing this from a veteran, if we're going into battle, you got to be prepared and you've got to have your stuff ready. And so we're going to start talking about that today.
Absolutely. But before we jump into that, we got some good news for you here on this. That's right. It's time for the left-handed shake of the week, and we both have some exciting people to talk to you guys about today. I'm going to go first. So the person I want to share about with you guys is a client I've had in the recent past here. We're going to call her Hannah. But Hannah and I worked together. It was earlier this year, a few months ago, but we had a good experience working together. But it didn't take long for me to figure out that, and through our transaction that we accomplished together, that she had lost her husband recently, and when that happened, and when she told me that briefly, and I found out, it was an opportunity. I could have taken it two ways. I could have backed away from the opportunity and just decided to, focus on the transaction that we needed to do, and then just, move forward with it and kind of just maybe ignore it to an extent. Mm-hmm. But I could have taken that type of approach. I instead took the approach like, I really want to go above and beyond to help this lady out. I just feel like everything she's been through, that it's an opportunity for me just to make a connection with her and to not only help her, but also just help her with this transaction, that is, but also just try to help her and just be this, be Jesus to her,
Right.
And it gave me the opportunity to share a little bit about my story with her and things I've gone through with my cancer and stuff, and the loss that I've experienced as well in my
Mm-hmm.
life, with people in my life that I've lost, and really made it just an awesome connection. She's about my mother's age, so we just had this really good bond that we connected there, and she just really just had a great connection with this lady. And when it was all done, when our transaction was done, first off, I had to really just try to make sure that everything was lined up for her the whole way, because it was kind of a transaction that needed a lot of TLC along the way. So I did all of that, but at the end, she was just really super appreciative. And she even told me, she's like, Matt, I had expectations of this, how it was going to go, and you just really exceeded those expectations, going above and beyond to help me in the situation I'm in. And I didn't really, ask to be in this situation or anything like that. And unfortunately, that's just how life is. And she was just so appreciative of me. And I wasn't looking for that necessarily. I just wanted to. It was just felt like it was my duty just to be Jesus to her,
Right.
and to just to have that moment of vulnerability, with as she shared with me. I can return that, and just let her know that it's okay to not be okay sometimes.
Yeah.
And when you do that, it kind of breaks down those barriers that we all have. So people can, make those connections with people and other people, and just, share the good news and all that stuff. So it was just a really cool transaction. I feel like I made a friend for life with this lady, and a customer client for life. I hope that she's local, so I'll keep in touch with her over time. But it was just really cool experience. And it was just really neat to see how God would work through that situation and that relationship, even though we only worked with each other for it took us about a month, so it was a little while, but nonetheless, it was just a great experience. And I'm going to remember that, and just try to, anytime I have a similar situation or a client like that in the future, I can always, relate back to this situation and know that, hey, it's okay to kind of get personal sometimes, and to just go beyond, as opposed to just, the person you're dealing with just being another number or transaction.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, I love how you just dove straight in and encouraged and supported her along the way, that journey that you guys were taking together, and ministering to her along the way. Yeah, way to go.
Yeah, that was how it was, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Man, what a great moment.
Yeah, it really was. It really was. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, man. So I want to share about somebody that's on my usher team at church.
Okay.
And she was new to our team a couple of months ago, and she had missed a few weeks. And so our team is not like a great big team of people to serve. So when somebody's missing, we all see it. And so what we noticed was she was gone, and one of the other team members brought it to my attention, and she just asked, like, hey, have you seen her? And I said, no, I haven't. I said, I'm going to reach out to her. So that evening I looked her up and went in the system and looked her up to reach out to her. And it got late, and I thought, well, I don't want to send her a text real late at night, so I'm not going to do that tonight. I'll send it in the morning.
Yeah.
And I got distracted, right? Again, the devil's going to make you busy.
For sure.
So I got distracted, and later that morning, I get the email reminder from the church system that reminds me to reach out to the volunteers that I lead. And I'm like, wow. And it was a reminder to reach out to her. And I thought, wow, like, this is definitely God pushing the button. Like, hey, you need to reach out to her. And so I just sent her a quick text message and said, hey, we noticed you've been missing the last few weeks. Just wanted to check in and see how you are and what's going on. Is there anything I can help with? Mm-hmm. And I do that for all of our volunteers that serve with me. And I just want to, reach out to them and try to make it a good experience for them. And so I reached out to her and sent her that message. And she wrote me back nearly immediately. And so I was kind of surprised, because a lot of times when you get that kind of message from somebody, they don't write back super fast,
right.
And
right.
It wasn't like a prime time of day where you're going to be sitting around watching TV.
Yeah.
And so she wrote back immediately and started to share like what she was struggling with, some financial struggles, some family struggles, mental health struggles. And so she was really just having a hard time with that. And so she said, you reached out to me. I had literally just cried out to God and asked for help. And she said, and then I got your message.
Wow.
And so, like, super powerful in that moment, like, to realize my delay, God used that anyway.
Yeah.
To reach out and touch her. And so it was a super cool series of events that took place after that, where I was able to share a little bit with her about some depression struggles that I had in my past, and working through those and sharing like how bringing those to light and sharing those with other people in trusted circles is very healing, and can help bring some closure and bring some healing to some of those situations. And so I encouraged her to reach out to some of the folks in our on our team and share with that. But I also encouraged her to reach out to our pastor and encouraged her to talk to him as well. And so I reached out to him and said, hey, she's in need of a little bit of assistance. Why don't you reach out to her? And encourage that kind of communication in that direction too. And they were able to make a great connection later that week and sit down and spend some good quality time together and hash through a lot of things that were going on and kind of get a roadmap planned out for her and for her trajectory from that point forward. And that next weekend, we actually had her serving back on the team. And
awesome.
She was super excited to be there. All of our team was really excited to have her back.
Oh, that's cool, man.
We were able to pray for her, pray into her situation and what's going on, and just spend a few moments in our team huddle just celebrating her and letting her know, like, and encouraging her, like, we're walking through this process with you and we're here for you to encourage you. And so it was really a cool moment to be able to watch the Spirit move in that situation, with me interacting with her, but then watch her just blossom and open up and share what's going on and take steps forward in progress to bring healing and closure to some of that. It's just been great.
That's awesome, man. That's really cool, dude. I really appreciate you sharing that story. And you're right. I mean, you might, when you sent that text, you probably didn't think it would be that, I'm sure you didn't think it'd be that impactful. But that's, and even though it was, delay, as you say, it was right on time,
right.
And that's just another great example that it doesn't matter what you do. God can use it no matter where you are, just like we talked about in the story of Rahab a few weeks back, I mean, whether it's your sin, your disobedience, your delay, whatever it is, man. I mean, don't think that God can't use you where you're at and use anything, so it's just a great example of that. And I really hope that, she continues to come back and, she can invite somebody else and she can pay that same thing forward to somebody else. And that's really what that's what we're supposed to be doing, and that's what this whole movement about is that we're trying to create. And I just think that's a great story, man. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Well, great, everybody. Well, I'm happy to, talk about our topic of the week, of course, armor of God, talking about the belt of truth. So this is going to be our first series. We're really excited about this. We've been talking about it and thinking about it for a month or two at least. But this is our first real series, so we're going to break down the armor of God for all our listeners out there. But let's talk about firstly, why do we need this armor of God? Because like we talked about in the intro there, there's a spiritual battle going on every day, right? The battle of our flesh, which is worldly, which is full of evil and full of sin, versus the Holy Spirit. And even Jesus himself faced this, as we know in John 10:10, where, the devil's whole purpose, of course, is to steal, kill, and destroy. That's what the devil's trying to do. And it happens every day, all day long. And that battle's in our minds. So we need to be prepared, just like any other battle, right? So Paul lays it out very, very eloquently here in Ephesians chapter 6, and what is known across the Bible and theologians about the armor of God. So, Chris, you got some verses to read for us, right?
Yeah. We're just going to dive into the scripture for today. It's Ephesians 6, chapter 6, verses 10 through 14. It says, "Finally, be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. Stand, therefore, having fastened the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness." So we're going to save the breastplate of righteousness for next week.
That's right. So,
this week we're focused on the belt of truth.
Yeah, belt of truth only today, folks. So come back in next week for the breastplate of righteousness. But this is great. Paul's laying it out pretty eloquently here that we got to be prepared. Because the enemy's going to continue to attack all the time. But the first thing that he goes right after is the belt of truth, right? It all starts and ends with that. I mean, because as we know, and I think that, Paul, I think it's really cool how, remember he was in the jail cell when he wrote this, right? So he's looking at is Romans and and the attire that they wore predominantly in that area was a tunic, right? Which most of the time they didn't wear a belt on it, unless they had a purpose, right? Unless they had some action to take, some movement, right? And when they did, what did they do? They put on a belt.
That's right. Yeah, that belt became very useful in their daily lives, especially when they needed to move and move quickly, move with a purpose, as we say in our house.
Yeah.
So frequently they would use that belt to help tuck their tunic into it, pick it up from in front of their feet. So if the person wanted to move quickly or to run, you didn't want to trip over your long tunic or your skirt, as I keep referring to it. So you had to tuck that thing in your belt to get it up out of the way. And so, as we start talking about this, Matt, I wanted to kind of remind our listeners a few things about the armor of God that we kind of need to establish right up front. Like, we've established why we need the armor of God, because we're doing battle against the enemy.
Right.
And so it's very important to note some things about this armor that we're about to put on over the next several episodes as we break it down for our listeners. I'm really excited about it, but one of the things that we need to keep in mind is that if you're going to go into battle, you got to put your armor on first.
That's right.
So it's important to start your day out by putting on the armor, because you're about to walk into the battlefield every day. When you get out of bed, put your armor on, because the battle's on. And so I think that's one of the most important things to keep in mind right off the bat. Put your armor on.
That's right.
Another thing I wanted to point out is that with all of this armor of God that we're going to be talking about over the next several episodes, it's all forward facing. So there's nothing covering your back. And so your back is completely exposed. And I think it's a couple of points to that. One, it means all the armor's forward facing. There's no room for retreat.
Right.
We're not turning our back to the enemy to run away. We're facing him head on in the situation. The other thing is because our back is exposed, then that leaves us vulnerable from behind. And so what does that mean? That means that we need to stand in rank and file with other believers. We need to have that community of other believers standing in there, front, back, side to side. We're protecting not only ourselves but each other. And so I think if you can picture in your mind that Roman soldier standing behind a solo Roman soldier all by himself on a battlefield, and he's going to try to defend arrows from the enemy or a swordsman from the enemy, he's going to be quickly outnumbered and he's going to be vulnerable all by himself. But when he's there in community with the other soldiers fighting, they can link their shields together to bring that protection, not only for themselves, but for the guy next to him. And so I think that's important, is that we need to step into this battle surrounded by other believers that are wearing the same armor we are. Absolutely. And then finally, one thing I want to point out too, coming from a little bit of a military background, from being retired military, I think it's important to realize armor's heavy. It's cumbersome. It is hard to move in. Even today's armor, it's still heavy. Our guys today aren't wearing chainmail and helmets.
No.
We're not fighting with swords.
That's dated.
But the armor's still heavy.
Right.
And so the helmets are heavy, the body armor's heavy, all of the gear that you're carrying is heavy. And so because of that, it's going to restrict your movement. And so one of the things I wanted to point out was it requires us to train with that equipment, to become super familiar with it, to learn how to use it, how it's going to restrict us, and how to overcome those restrictions. It's going to we have to continue to train and adapt to that equipment and become familiar with it so that we can use it effectively when we are doing battle. And so it's not one of the things that you can just slap on when you get out of bed and be like, all right, I'm ready, and then you've done nothing to prepare for the battle. And so if we're going into battle, you need to be armed up. You got to be prepared.
That's right, and it's made specifically for us. This is armor that was designed for us specifically, and everybody's different. Everybody's armor is going to look slightly different, but it all has the basic same purposes from each piece of it. Obviously today focusing on the belt of truth to hold everything in place, really, and to create order to our armor, because without a belt, if you're in battle, you've got nothing. It holds everything, right? It holds all your equipment. It is the order piece of everything. So without it, you're quite vulnerable, to say the least.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I think it's some of the notes I took down was it holds our garments in place, like you're saying.
Yeah.
It is the center part of our body when you think about wearing your belt. I know I wear a belt just about every day, but it does hold our garments in place, and it's going to support that armor. You can kind of, if you're holding a shield or you're holding something heavy, I know sometimes at work I'll put my thumb through my belt to kind of help provide some support to whatever I'm holding in my hand. So I know that can help, and it's also used to help carry our weapons.
Yeah.
And so later on in one of the episodes, we're going to talk about the sword of the Spirit, and so that's what we're going to be putting onto that belt, and it's going to carry that, so it's at the ready for us to do battle.
Yeah.
But back in the Roman times, if you had an archer, he would often put his quiver on there with his arrows, so they're ready to go, so he can just continue to shoot them. Whatever weapons could be tucked into those knives or whatever into your belt. So it's a very useful tool. But it's interesting to me that Paul referred to it as the belt of truth. And so he's surrounding his loins, his midsection, where you would think of all of your emotion, all of your feeling to come from. Like you have that gut feeling. You're bringing in the truth, and you want it firmly wrapped around your waist. I think that's a key part. And so one of the things I thought of as we were doing this is, how do we define like truth?
Yeah.
And so truth's like a state of being in accordance with fact or reality.
Yeah, that's the definition of it.
If that's the definition, and in today's world, you hear a lot of subjective truth, which is it my truth or your truth,
right,
or is it his truth? And so is that really real? Like, I don't think so. We're looking for that objective truth, right? And in this case, we're talking about Jesus. He is the objective truth. The Bible is the objective truth. It's talking about Jesus and his word. And so I think it's important that we have this authentic truth that doesn't bend to like our desires or our emotion. That authentic truth of Jesus is there, and he's constant and he's secure. And I think that's what we need wrapped around us, around our midsection, to help support and encourage us and hold us upright and to help carry some of the weight. We need that truth, and we need it fastened snugly around us.
Yeah, and you're right. It's another reason why I think Paul chose the belt to start out with here, in the belt of truth specifically, because you're right, all those gut feelings that come about us, which, as we know, are really from the flesh, right? That's sin nature. So what do? We strap truth right around that flesh, to let that flesh know in our bodies, like, hey, you're reminded, that, hey, I've got truth here that's going to combat this fleshly sin.
Right.
And I know for me, like, I'm a big belt guy. I'm wearing a belt right now. If I don't wear a belt, sometimes it feels weird.
Yeah.
Like if I leave the house without a belt on, it's like, oh man, something's wrong. I just don't feel right, you know? And because you need that. You should never leave home without a belt, and you certainly shouldn't leave home without a belt of truth.
Right.
And that's why I think it's just really an awesome analogy that Paul's described here. And you're right. There's no accident that it happens to be in the same place where those fleshly, temptations or in gut feelings are going to come from. Because we really want to siphon those, and put a cap on those feelings and cap on those gut feelings and that subjectivity, and we're going to place around it some objective, real life, absolute truth, authentic truth. And that's great segue, man, about what truth is, because accordingly, you laid it out there, that it is, you gave the definition, all that, but we don't always like the truth. I mean, that's right. It's and the reality is, the truth is what it is. You can't bend it or break it. Now, as we know, the devil certainly will use the truth against us sometimes, and will pick and choose from the truth, as he did there. You got, we got, talking about where Jesus, obviously in Matthew 4, right? Like we talked about. But, modern worldly truth is all distorted. And we don't like the truth sometimes. I think we choose to change it, I mean, I think that Whether it's you don't like what you hear at a job, maybe you change jobs. You don't like what you hear at a church, you change church, so, or a doctor or anything else. I mean, but ultimately the truth is what it is, and we have to just accept that.
Yeah. And I think, going along those same lines, our view of truth, we have to kind of determine how we want to view the truth. Jesus talks about the truth will set you free, right? In John 14:6, he says, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Right? And so I think when we're looking at that truth, and we're looking at Jesus being the objective truth, the clear truth, then our perspective of him, like, it may be hard to deal with, but if we're trying to be more like Jesus every day, then we need to continue to lean into that and to continue to prepare for that. And I think how we do that is interesting, how we become more accustomed with the truth in doing those things. And so one of the analogies that I heard about learning truth was from bank tellers. Yeah. So bank tellers, interestingly, they're not taught how to identify fraudulent bills. Like you're not taught to identify counterfeit bills. Instead, they're taught to identify real bills. And so how do they do that? Bank tellers handle money all the time. And so they know the feel of it. They know the color. They know what it looks like. But they actually know money. They know the smell. They know exactly how to handle it. They know how it handles back. Like they know every characteristic of dollar bills. And so they are so familiar with that when you hand them a counterfeit bill, they immediately know what it is and immediately know that it's a fake and it's a lie. And why is that? Because they are so familiar with the truth. And so I think if we become so familiar with the truth of Jesus that no matter what schemes the enemy's throwing at us and he's bringing to bear against us in warfare, that we're able to recognize those schemes as lies because we are so immersed in the truth. And so I think as we do that, the truth, as we kind of just absorb it and we are around him, I think what we're going to start to see is the truth will start to shine out of us. And so, like, as it's shining out of us, it kind of highlights that counterfeit truth that the enemy's bringing. And I loved how you mentioned Matthew 4, talking about Jesus being tempted.
Right.
That's a clear example. You can go back to the garden if you wanted, but in Matthew 4, Jesus has gone out to the desert and he's fasted for 40 days, and Satan comes to him and is offering him food. And so Jesus is countering his twisted lies, his twisted truth, as I'll call it.
Yeah.
With actual truth, scriptural truth. Well, how did Jesus do that? It wasn't like he just learned that truth that day, right? He's been preparing all along, just like I was saying earlier. He's been putting on that armor daily. He's been practicing with it. He's been learning how to use it. And so now that he's encountering the enemy face to face, he's able to wield that truth and fend him off by just quoting back scripture. And so I think that that's important for us today, is that we're able to take that truth, absorb it and soak it in, and so that we become so familiar, like those bank tellers with those dollar bills, that we can absorb that, and that when we come in contact with that counterfeit truth, quote unquote truth, that we can call it what it really is, and it's a lie.
That's right. And and I'll tell you this, friends, if you're out there and you believe a lie, I mean, if you think that the devil only used those tactics against Jesus himself, well, I got news for you. It's happening to us too. He's using the same methods today as he did back then. But we can rest assured knowing that God's conquered the devil and that he wins out. Yeah. And we can demolish those type of strongholds that we have in our lives. But we have to commit to it, daily usage and consistency in this armor. Great example here in 2 Corinthians 10, 3 through 5. I'm going to read this for you guys. For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God, and take every thought captive to obey Christ. it's a litmus test, really. Everything that comes in into our thoughts, we need to scrub it against, hey, am I honoring God with this, or am I not?
Right.
We have to think about every single thing, and that's really part of, you have to basically examine it to the truth, right? I mean, does this, this thought I have, does this feeling I have, does it line up to the truth of the Holy Spirit inside me, or is it to my flesh?
That's right.
So friends, if you're out there and you're dealing with that, and maybe it's a lie and you're just following along with it, maybe for whatever reason it's just hard to overcome. You're choosing that route because it's maybe hey, what am I to say? You don't know what I'm going through, Matt, and you're right, I don't. But at the same time, I do know that we, if we consistently turn things over to God more and more each day, that He'll heal us from that. We just have to ask for it, and we have to be consistent with it. We have to bring it to Him, and let Him take it from there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think along those lines is like, as we're starting to step into wearing our belt of truth, what's that really look like in our lives? And so I think some of the things that I see is when we wear that belt of truth, we put on that truthfulness, it brings that truth into our lives and shines through us. It also brings that integrity in our life that comes with that. Mm-hmm. And so we're living that integrity-filled, truth-filled life. And so everyone around us knows they're going to get the truth. And we're not wielding the truth as a weapon. We're wielding it as something to bring support and encouragement, and to be able to have it soaked into us so we can really point out where the lies are and help give us that strength that we need.
It's a measuring stick.
It is.
It really is.
It really is.
Use it to measure, hey, is this line up with God or not?
Yeah.
It really can be that simple. It's not always easy to execute,
right?
Because you don't know what kind of, every situation is complex, but it's a measuring stick right there,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it basically will, in our lives, when we've incorporated the truth and we're living those truthful, integrity-filled lives, it sets a great foundation for all of our armor to set on, right? And for us to lean into and to find that support. And so I think it builds that foundation. I think also it's going to help hold that and support that sword of the Spirit, like we mentioned earlier.
Yeah.
And, I kind of alluded to it earlier too as well. It's going to help bring that stability so that we can stand up to those lies and give us that reinforcement that we need. I was thinking about this week as you and I were preparing for this episode. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about, have you ever sat at a stoplight or something and the light turns green and everybody sits there and looks around because it's like a construction zone or something? Nobody knows what to do and they're kind of confused.
Yeah.
But your light turned green. You're like, well, I'm out of here. And you just pull forward and everybody at the light's like, what's he doing? Right. And you're like, I'm following what we're supposed to do.
Right.
Right. Why? Because you knew the truth.
Yeah.
Right. I'm following the truth. The light said go. It's my turn to go. I'm going to go. And I know what I'm doing. And so I think when you have the truth in your life, you're able to bring that out and bring that to bear in your life. And those around you will see it. And it will set you apart because they see that truthfulness in you. They see God's truth in you. And like I said earlier, it's not something that just happens. It's there because you've been intentional.
Right.
You've gone ahead and seek the truth. You found the truth. You found Jesus, and you're incorporating Him into your daily life by being in His Word, by coming to know Him. Jesus talks about, my sheep will know my voice, right? Well, how do we as His sheep know His voice? It's because we've been training ourselves to listen for Him and to listen for His voice. And so just like that bank teller handling that money, if you're listening for Jesus calling us and you know His voice, the enemy could call you all he wants, but he's never going to get you. And so I think we just lean into that and know that truth so deeply.
Yeah, it just takes consistency over time. It gets easier as we go along in life, each decision that comes up. But it all starts in the beginning, It's just taking one step at a time.
That's right.
Anytime you do something new, whether you're going to the gym in January, whatever it is, it just takes that first step, and it's gonna be awkward and clunky and difficult at first, but you just have to keep at it one day at a time. I mean, everybody had to get there the same way. Everybody puts on their pants one leg at a time. You got to do that. And this is, before we wrap up today, there's, another great example in the Word too, that talks about how important it is to, have order. Another analogy of our attire. That's back in Exodus 12. Where the Lord speaking to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, and right there in verse, I think it's 10, is it not? Mm-hmm. In this manner you shall eat it, with your belt fastened, your sandals on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and you shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. So talking about the Passover, and here is God talking to Moses. Another great example right here that they're supposed to be sitting down, enjoying this Passover meal, mm-hmm. right? But wait a minute, you got to do it with your belt on, because you got to be holding your shirt in, because you got to be ready, essentially.
Right.
And you got to have the sandals on your feet, which we know to be the gospel of peace, which that's coming in a few weeks for mm-hmm. you folks. And your staff in your hand, which kind of another analogy for a shield of faith we're going to be talking about here too. And you eat it in haste. So, you're basically, you need to be ready. There's an urgency of movement coming soon. So even though there is, bottom line is there's no time to put your armor down.
Right.
The reality is, yes, there's times to rest. There's times to, even God himself rest. Back in the beginning, and if all through the Bible, there's points of rest that we need to have. But even in those times of rest, your armor's still on.
Right.
You have to be protecting yourself at all costs, because the devil never quits.
That's right. Yeah, he doesn't take a day off.
No.
Yeah, we have to be ready. Like we mentioned earlier, first thing when you get out of bed, put the armor on.
That's right.
And be ready to do battle. And I'll tell you, it's one of those, Matt, you've seen it in your life. I've seen it in my life. You're either going through a battle, getting ready to go into a battle, or you just came out of one. And so you're in one of those stages of that cycle. And they're not exactly fun. But in those stages of that cycle, we're drawing closer to God. We're growing our faith. We're learning more about him. We're diving into his word in this case, drawing and growing in our truth, absorbing that truth into our life. And so I think that that's really important. So really, now that we've discussed all that, how are we going to live this out this week, Matt? And I think that's kind of what we're drawing down to, like we do in every episode. How are we going to live this out in our daily lives? And so as you and I were discussing this, we both just couldn't agree fast enough. The very first step, put your armor on.
Got to start putting it on, man. Don't leave home without it.
That's right. You said that, and I just died laughing earlier. You can't go without it. So get your armor on. And so, being a retired military guy, I spent a lot of time doing military exercises, mm-hmm. and we used to call it load-bearing equipment, LBE. Okay. And so that would be your big, fat Army green belt, right? Sometimes you'd have a suspenders connected to it to help support some of the weight, put it on your shoulders. But on that belt, you would find oftentimes more than one canteen. You'd find ammunition holder pouches that would hold magazines for your weapon. Mm-hmm. You would find sometimes you'd put a knife or a radio. Definitely, when I was over in the Middle East, we were wearing gas masks connected to our belts.
Yeah.
And they're giant and big and bulky and sling all over the place. But you definitely wouldn't want to carry that by hand. And so that belt really, I think you hit the nail on the head. That belt enabled us to have freedom for our hands to handle the weapons, to handle our work, to handle, at Passover, to be able to eat our food in haste. Mm-hmm. And so I think that we need to be able to put that armor on and get that armor on quickly first thing in the morning.
Yeah, and we need our hands free to accept God's promptings. We need to be our hands to be obedient. My hands are for you to work. God, I'm open. My hands are open. They can't be open if I'm holding on to all my equipment. Imagine being a soldier walking into battle with no belt on. He's holding everything. He's holding all the items you said. That's impossible to do, right?
Yeah.
He might as well just be the sitting duck. You either have to drop something, so now you're unprepared, or you're just the first guy down. So. Mm-hmm. So your hands need to be ready. Your feet need to be ready, and we're going to talk more about hands and feet in the coming weeks. But that's the purpose of the belt is to keep it all in order and to keep all those tools ready, so we can have our hands available So, and I think the next step on there, what was that, Chris?
So step 2 is immerse our lives in truth, in God's word.
Yeah.
So be actively engaged in God's word daily. And so when we're studying that truth, like I mentioned earlier, it's going to help to soak in so that when we do encounter those lies, we can identify them quickly. And it's only because we've absorbed the truth. We're not looking to get familiar with lies. We're looking to soak in the truth.
That's right. Got to be able to, take in the truth. That means, consistent, connection with God. If you've been listening to all these episodes before, we've been talking about this every week. You need that quiet time. You need that connection with God. You need to be in the Word every day. You need to be praying every day. You need to have a Paul and a Timothy in your life that you're pouring into and receiving from. It's all, the Spirit has to flow through you. All those things that we've talked about every single week. So it's just a daily, consistent practice in that because the more you know the truth, then the easier that bell gets to put on, Right. It's like me. I'm kind of accustomed to that belt every time that I leave the house. The one time a year I don't put it on, it's like I feel like I'm naked.
Right.
It's the same thing. When you're familiar with the truth and you're familiar, you're in touch with God every single day, you won't want to leave home without it.
That's right.
It's just part of you at that point. And that's really the goal of where you want to be. It's not just let me bring God along with me today. No, it's like I get to bring God along with me every day.
That's right.
That's the difference.
Yeah, you're not even thinking. You're grabbing.
Yeah.
You're grabbing God. You're spending time in that Word every day. It is a part of your life. It's not something that you're adding to your life. Right. You've gone past that step. It takes 3 weeks or something to build a habit.
Yeah.
Right. You're past that 3 weeks.
Oh yeah.
Right. So you've moved past that. You've incorporated studying the truth, studying the Word, and being in that relationship with God. You're in the relationship with God now. Mm-hmm. And so be a part of that, and He's with you. So continue to immerse yourself in that truth. That's step 2.
Absolutely. It's like wallet, keys, and phone. You got to have it every time.
That's right. You got to have it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then finally, I think step 3, we talked about the armor's all forward facing. Mm-hmm. So we have to be in community.
Right.
So somebody's got to have your back. You mentioned your Paul and your Timothy. You're learning from someone, you're teaching someone, you're surrounding yourself with believers that are also arming up.
Yeah.
And they're all preparing for battle as well. So you can encourage each other. You can buddy check your buddies around you and make sure
arms. Everybody's
got their right stuff, their right equipment. And you can support and definitely lock arms and go into battle together.
Yeah, because collectively, we aren't meant to do this life alone, and we need other people with us. We need to be locking arms with fellow believers. Yep. When we are isolated, it's much easier for the devil to come in and attack us. We are much more susceptible. Our armor is great, and we're we've been given this armor that we're talking about today and in future weeks. But we also got to have it's so much more powerful in the collective than it is in the being individual.
Right. Yeah. You definitely want to have those other brothers, other believers around you, and I think encouraging it within your home, letting your family see you be the lead, or you taking on that leadership role, that encouragement role in your house, whether it's in your marriage, your friendships with your kids, in your small groups from church. Sunday school classes or whatever. I think we need to go ahead and step into those roles and take those leads and encourage those around us to arm up as well so that we can all be prepared and step into battle together.
Absolutely. And this has been a lot of fun. I've really enjoyed this first episode in the Armor of God series. I hope you out there, listeners, have enjoyed it as well. Chris and I really poured a lot into this. We're going to have some more great stuff coming for you guys soon. But let's go to battle together. We'd love to hear from you guys about, what's your experience with your armor? How does that look? How do you detail it out? What things do you focus on in the armor? Where's your strengths? We'd love to hear about all that stuff. Please hit us up. Our emails and text and everything is in the show notes. We always want to, hear from you guys. So please don't hesitate to do that. We got more exciting content coming from you guys next week. Right, Chris?
That's right. We'll see you then.
Yeah, and in the meantime, keep grinding.